Colleges spend a lot of money to have philosophers sit on an armchair and think about stuff. Couldn't they spend that money solving world hunger or something? Shouldn't they? Is philosophy a waste of resources? Let's consider.
I can't get it off my mind.
Hello, philosophers. I'm Chico. Welcome to the Philosopher Show, where we consider the greatest questions in human history. I have a scenario for you that I think pertains to this question. Imagine somebody who is brilliant, right? That could probably go on and solve some kind of big problem, like let's say cure a disease, and that person becomes enamored with philosophy, right? Watches some fun YouTube show, right, about philosophy, maybe thephilosopher.com, and all of a sudden becomes passionate about philosophy and no longer wants to pursue that other career field. What do you think about that? What do you think about somebody who could save a lot of lives, but falls in love with some other, occupation and decides not to pursue that? Do you think you're morally obliged to follow that path? Do you would you dissuade that person from becoming a philosopher? Would you even, maybe you would even count those all those lives that could have been saved as on the head of the philosophy show host, because had he not said such witty and clever things, then all of a sudden we would have all these lives left. Who knows? Anyway, I think, personally, I think, that's a hard sell to say that somebody is obligated to pursue something they don't want to pursue because it'll save lives. I mean, I do think we're obliged to save lives, sure, but I mean, you could save lives as a human blood bank. You know what I mean? You could spend your life in a hospital just, getting your blood harvested. This is really gross. I don't know where this came from. But you could, save lots of lives by just being a human blood bank. Most of us would say that you're not obliged to save those lives in the way. I mean, maybe you are obliged to donate blood, but not to, spend your whole life pursuing something that is not fulfilling in some way. So, what about, though, philosophy as a waste of resources? That's an interesting question as the traffic rolls by in San Clemente. Apologize. We're going to get a better microphone and maybe a less squeaky chair. I don't know. This thing, I don't know how it makes so much noise. I do have a philosopher's butt, right? Which has been sitting on this chair for a long time. So, what about two resources, time and intelligence? It seems like, we're given very limited time, and intelligence is hard to come by in the world. How can we justify dedicating those to philosophy instead of to medical sciences or something like that? I think I've already given some reasons that philosophy earns its keep. In some of my earlier videos, go ahead and check out, that we all ask these really big questions, but we're confused about these questions, and we just seem to just randomly pick answers. Philosophers help us to think through these questions and even give us more options than maybe we thought we had. I also think philosophers help us to understand others, through understanding their philosophies. But yeah, check out those other videos. I think they give you good reasons. But I think there are a couple of answers specifically to this objection that are germane. And here's my first one. Okay, so let's take first these two resources: intelligence and our time, our lives, basically. Right? What is the point of these resources? What should we be doing with these resources? Well, we're going to be talking past each other unless we determine what the goal of these things are. Like, why have these things? basically, that those are questions about what is the goal of life. Is the goal of life to save as many lives as possible? It sure sounds great. I like that idea, but there's also, not everybody agrees. Some people don't think there's any goal of life. Some people think you should save the world, and some people think you should conquer the world, right? I don't really have that answer for you right now or anything like that. But my point is that we're going to have to, in order to answer this question correctly, determine what we believe the goal of life is. And guess what? That's a philosophical question, right? So here's what's interesting. We want to know, what should we do with these resources? Well, we won't be able to figure out what we should do with these resources until we've done philosophy. So I don't think we can just throw out philosophy. And I don't think philosophy has, like the only thing to say about the meaning of life. For example, I think religion has a lot to say about it. I teach world religions and I've taught, philosophy of religion and stuff like that. And so I thought about this a lot. And I think it's a lot like, imagine the person that invents the surfboard just leaves it out, and you and I are walking around. We see this surfboard, and it blows our minds. What could this thing be? What's it for? What should we do with this thing? Now we could use our reason, right, to try to figure out what this thing is or what is its purpose, and that would be great. But then if the maker of the surfboard comes over and explains it to us, or just tells us, oh, here's what you do with it, right? He doesn't explain how it works, but he just tells us, this is what you do. Then, we would be justified in believing that. And then we might want to use our reason further to figure out what else we can do with this surfboard. But, that there's nothing wrong with taking his word for it. He's an authority figure. I think religion does the same thing. Assuming a religion is correct, whoever or whatever it was that created these lives tells us, here's what they're for, here's why I made them, and then we can still use our reason to figure out other things about it, but we would trust that. Or if you're a philosopher and just doing pure philosophy, you would try to figure it all out on your own. My point is more that just philosophy doesn't have the final say, maybe, but definitely it's very useful. I mean, it considers questions like, what is a human? What is the point of a human? What should or shouldn't we do? What is real? What are the kinds of things we know? All those questions go into the question of what do we do with this life? So yeah, I think philosophy is important in even answering this question. And then secondly, here's my second response to this objection doing philosophy. I think that this is an objection that applies not just to philosophy, but really to all humanities. All humanities, in a way, are worthless, right? You're not going to build any bridges out of them. You're not going to use a song to cure a disease. You're not going to, unless maybe metaphorically, I don't know. But you're not going to use literature to solve world hunger. Maybe you can use it in directing people, but you're not going to directly solve world hunger through literature. So, what is the point of doing humanities if they don't save lives? You could say, and philosophy gets thrown into that mix. What's the point of philosophy along with them? Well, I think for humanities, they give us fuller lives, right? You can imagine, what if we solved all world hunger, we cured all diseases, which are very, these are definitely things that we should be trying to do. But let's say we do all those things, now what? Do we just sit around and look at each other? Clearly our lives would not be as full if it weren't for all these other things that are, quote unquote, useless. So I think we do philosophy also because it helps us to get a fuller life. So yeah, I think the best philosophy happens in dialogue. So please comment. I have a question about that last statement I have. Do you think that argument works for philosophy? I mean, clearly, everybody loves movies. So few people, are willing to do the hard work to do philosophy. So maybe we should say, yeah, there are some things that are worth doing because they give us fuller lives. But this philosophy thing, I think I gave you good reasons in another episode. But yeah, tell me what you think about that. It is definitely much harder to do philosophy than to watch a movie. Also, do you think that we are morally obliged to dedicate our lives to something that saves lives, or something that is practically useful? Because even as a philosopher, I don't end it there. I think there might be other things that I should do that are practically useful. Build houses. I don't know. Something that you do on your off time or something like that. I don't know. Do you think we're morally obliged to do those things, or are they just nice things that we could do if we want to? Or yeah. Anyway, please like, subscribe, comment, tag a friend so they can join the conversation. See you next time. Adios.